Now, U.S. President Barack Obama says he's willing to accept a short-term increase in the debt ceiling if it helps lawmakers finalize a comprehensive budget deal. The president, who threatened to veto any short-term measure, now says he'll support increasing the borrowing limit for a few days, but needs more time to pass the legislation. This comes as the U.S. government fast moves closer to its first ever default amid a worsening debt crisis. The Congress and the White House are struggling to agree on the terms of raising the federal government's debt ceiling that now stands at some $14.3 trillion and counting. Unless they reach a deal before the 2nd of August this year, Washington will be in default. Paul Sheldon Foote, Professor of California State University, joins us now on the line from Irvine, California, to discuss the situation. Professor, thanks for joining us. First of all, Obama agreeing to a short-term remedy for the debt crisis, even if, in his word, it is a few days. What does that tell you?
It tells me that he's not serious. He's simply kicking the can down the road again. He can extend the deadlines all he wants, but Standard & Poor's and Moody's have already threatened to lower America's credit ratings regardless on their time schedule, not his. So we could be in a situation where we have no government agreement and downgrades from credit agencies and be in the worst of both worlds.
So if you think that there will be no government agreement, that would be saying that neither the Democrats nor the Republicans would want to stop the default. Do you think they will allow that to happen? They will allow America to default on its debt?
Well, they don't dare allow America to default. Both parties know that if either one of them can be blamed for a default, that they will be out of office forever. Their party is history. So each one is trying to pretend that there is movement. But Obama has been totally dishonest. He hasn't produced any budget, let alone a balanced budget, for nearly 800 days. I mean, even when the Democrats controlled both the House and the Senate, they didn't produce a budget. They do not want voters to see what needs to be cut because they're afraid of losing votes. So they're going through this charade very successfully of convincing a lot of Americans that they're trying to make compromises and do things, and the Republicans are the bad guys.
But
At the same time, the Republicans are saying, hey, you have shown absolutely no evidence that you'll ever cut spending under any circumstances, and the Republicans are right about that.
Right, but when you say that, this is something that's concerning the national interests of the United States, isn't it? I mean, how far are they willing to go to not to undermine the national interests when we are speaking of the debt crisis? Why has the situation reached this point that now the American politicians have failed to agree on something that's putting very much pressure on their national interests?
Well, there haven't been extreme consequences yet, thanks largely to all the catastrophes going on in Europe right now. So that America, as we're saying here in the business channels, America has the best house in an ugly neighborhood. But if we pay the price with a huge downturn in the stock or bond markets or both this summer, there will be a lot of very unhappy voters, and they are going to start blaming probably both parties at that time.
But Professor Foote, if I could just before we leave you, also ask you, what do you think once a compromise is reached, if indeed it is, and once a step is taken to allow the default not to happen, whether it will include more spending cuts or tax hikes?
The Democrats are totally opposed to any kind of spending cuts. This gang of six that proposed some spending cuts were proposing things that were published last fall by the President's own Deficit Commission. We should be closing down at least a third of our military bases, according to the Deficit Commission. I'd say close almost all of them down immediately, and all wars immediately. Instead, they talk about cutting the medical benefits for military veterans and retirement benefits. And so this is how it gets twisted. You always pick a few examples that you know are unpopular to try to win your way. The president knows what to do: end the wars, cut military spending, reform Medicare, reform Social Security immediately, and he doesn't dare do it.
Okay, thanks very much. Professor Paul Sheldon Foote from California State University joining us there on the line from Irvine.